Welcome back to the Wapiti Regional Library. Today, we're out in the bush exploring some different ecosystems. Before we head down and start exploring the creek, it's important that we understand what a wetland is. A wetland is an area where water sits and gathers. Some examples of wetlands are muskeg, ponds and sloughs, lakes, rivers, and creeks. Wetlands include areas where water has been for years and years and years. Or wetlands can be seasonal, meaning that they appear for just a short amount of time. Think about when the snow melts in the spring and suddenly there's a pond in the yard where there wasn't one before. What do wetlands look like? Well, depending on where you are, wetlands can look very different. Even here in our province, Saskatchewan, there are all different types of wetlands. Let's go over some wetlands in Saskatchewan. Ecozones are large ecosystems. In each zone, the plants, animals, climate, and landforms are very similar. In each of the ecozones, you'd expect to find the same plants and animals. Saskatchewan is broken up into 4 different ecozones. The ecozones in Saskatchewan from south to north are called the Prairie Ecozone, the Boreal Plain Ecozone, the Boreal Shield Ecozone, and the Taiga Ecozone. Today, when we go out exploring, we're going to be in the Boreal Plain Ecozone. That's where I live, right there in Prince Albert. Before we go exploring, let's take a closer look at each ecozone in Saskatchewan. The Prairie Ecozone is also called the breadbasket of Canada because there are so many farms here. These farms are so important because they grow a lot of the food that we eat here and around the world. The Prairie Ecozone also has many wetlands, like lakes, rivers, sloughs, and marshes. This ecozone provides critical nesting grounds for lots of migratory birds. Remember, migratory birds are birds that leave an area and move to another one, typically when the seasons or temperature start to change. Now let's take a closer look at the Boreal Plain Ecozone. This area serves as the transition between the Prairie Ecozone and the Boreal Shield Ecozone. Here we see lots of farmland and forests. Wetlands here are very diverse. There are lakes, rivers, creeks, sloughs, marshes, and muskeg. Boreal muskeg is really crucial because it helps to regulate the global climate. We'll talk about this a little bit later. Now, let's take a quick look at the Boreal Shield. The Boreal Shield has many lakes, rivers, marshes, and muskeg. The Boreal Shield is the largest ecozone in Canada. The animals and plants found here are very unique and really interesting. And way up at the very top of our province is the Taiga Ecozone. Like the Boreal Plain, this ecozone is also a transitional place. It's a transition between the Boreal Shield and the Arctic. Low-lying wetlands like muskeg and marshes cover anywhere from 25 to 50% of this ecozone. That's a lot of water. We've talked a lot today about muskeg, but what is muskeg? Muskeg is the Canadian way of saying a bog or peatland. Peatlands are areas of land made up of peat, with peat being a type of soil made up by dead plants that haven't completely broken down yet. These areas are waterlogged, meaning they're full of water. Peatlands store more than just water, however. They store more carbon than any other vegetation type in the world combined. So peatlands and muskeg are important because they store about 1/3 of all soil carbon worldwide. 25% of all muskeg and peatlands are found in Canada. When bogs or muskeg is destroyed, that soil carbon is released into the atmosphere. So that carbon is able to do what carbon does and take in heat and energy from the sun and release it back towards the earth. Now that we understand what a wetland is, let's talk about some of the creatures that need wetlands in order to survive. Insects like dragonflies and mosquitoes have to use wetlands to complete part of their life cycle. Mammals also need wetlands and water to survive. Some birds, like ducks or geese, almost completely live in the water. Fish are creatures that really depend on water. So are amphibians. We don't have time to cover all of these creatures. So today we're going to focus on 2 different types. The first is beavers, and the second is water invertebrates. We're going to start with the beaver. Here are some fun beaver facts. Beavers are Canada's national animal and can be found in wetlands throughout the country, from coast to coast. They are the largest rodent in North America. The heaviest beaver ever caught was over 110 pounds. That's crazy. Importantly, beavers are a keystone species. No, not a key and a stone, But a keystone species, is a plant or an animal that acts like a glue to hold an entire ecosystem or habitat together. If we didn't have beavers around, then entire wetland habitats would be lost, and ecosystems would lose valuable biodiversity. Beavers are ecosystem engineers, meaning that they create, modify, and maintain landscapes. Let's take a look and see just how a beaver can shape and form wetlands. Here we have a small creek. It's not very large or deep, but here comes a young and eager little beaver. As he swims down the creek, he is looking for a good place to build a dam. He found a place. Next, he'll walk up on shore and chew down some trees with his big front teeth. As he slowly stacks up trees, mud, and even stones, the creek begins to back up and get deeper and wider. Our little beaver continues to chop down trees, smack mud, and roll rocks. His dam gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Soon the creek is flooding the surrounding land, creating a wetland habitat. Because water doesn't completely stop at a dam and continues to flow through, the creek on the other side of the dam also gets a little bit wider. Now that the dam is large enough and the creek is deep enough, our little beaver will build himself a house in a safe place. He will one day have babies, and those babies will one day leave the beaver's house and travel down or up the creek and build dams of their own. Now that we know a little bit about beavers, let's go out in the field and see if we can find a real-life beaver dam. We're going to be walking down to the Garden River, just north of Prince Albert. I also call this area a creek. Whoa! Before we go any further, I have to give a pretty big warning. Never eat any berries from outside without first showing an adult what plant you got them from. There are many plants in Saskatchewan that are very poisonous and can make us very sick. On our way down to the creek, we see lots of different plants and animals. Here I found some wild strawberries, just starting to flower. Near the strawberries, there were even some wild raspberries. And look, little Johnny jump ups. They're so pretty and purple. And under these willows, what is that? Oh my goodness, they're northern bluebells. How pretty. As we get closer and closer to the creek, I start to see evidence of beavers. This willow has recently been chewed off. We can tell a beaver has been here. And through the grass on the shore, I spot a hole. I can see where the beaver has been coming in and out of the water. I think we're getting close to a beaver dam. I can hear the running water. Oh my goodness! Let's take a closer look. Look here! There's some willow in the beaver dam, just like we saw cut down on shore. We made it across the beaver dam! Because I was walking through so much grass, I expected to get some ticks on me. Just around the corner from that little dam, I found a giant beaver dam that went all the way across the large creek. It was probably about 2.5 to 3.5 feet tall. It was huge. We can see that the water doesn't stop at the beaver dam. It continues to flow through. Next, let's quickly take a look at wetland invertebrates. Wetland invertebrates are animals without a backbone that complete at least part of their life cycle in fresh water. Scientists examine these creatures as a way to check up on the health of wetlands. Wetland invertebrates are bioindicators of wetland ecosystems. Health of wetlands. If we had a net and a bucket and scooped up some water from each wetland, which one do you think would be healthier? We can look at the type and number of invertebrates in each of our buckets to determine if that wetland is healthy or not. Now, we are going to try to find some creatures. Just around the corner from the large beaver dam, I found an old one that had been washed out. Here, because it was so shallow and the water so clear, I thought I could go in and see some really cool creatures. The first thing I saw when I stepped into the creek was a dead earthworm floating down the river. Next, I saw a tiny little baby clam. It was so cute. Even in the water, I couldn't escape the ticks. They were on my pants. That's number 2. I saw something really cool. On this little piece of grass in the water, I saw a little larva, but below the larva, there was something bigger, moving really slowly. Looking closer, it appears to be a cad's fly larva. These little insects use whatever they can find, empty shells, rocks, even little pieces of wood like this one, to put on their back and to hide away from predators. They're so cool. When I picked up the cad's fly larva, you can see he's made a home in a little piece of driftwood. He keeps sticking his hands and his head out. What a cool little creature. Next, I saw this big empty clamshell. Well, mostly empty. If we look closer, you can see a baby leech inching his way across, a tiny little snail calling this clamshell home. So much for not getting wet. My rubber boots are full of water. We saw some pretty cool stuff by that old beaver dam. To get the video of that worm, I had to go a little bit deeper than I wanted to. And now, my pants are soaking wet, and my boots are full of water. Goodness. It looks like it might just start to rain. So we're gonna head back to our little car. Woo! There he is. Hi, little car. You guys, on the way back to the little beaver dam, which is right there, I just found something really cool. Little jawbone. Holy smokes. A little vertebrae. There's his backbone. So cool. Oh my goodness. We're gonna have to take this back to the car with us. Let's see if we can make it across the creek without dropping any of our bones. When I got home, I opened up my books about bones, and I'm pretty sure that the skull we found belongs to a baby lynx. We made it back to our little car, guys. Oh goodness, I even forgot to close the door. Now, when we're out on adventures, it's important to remember we're gonna get dirty. We might get poked by little stingers, we might get leeches, we might get ticks, but we find some really cool stuff and get to see some pretty amazing creatures. Now, we are going to try to find some creatures. This is an activity that you can try with your parents or classmates. For this activity, you will need a bucket, a net, and a field guide. There is a link to the one that I am using today in the video description below. We're quickly going to come out here and do our wetland dipping because it's just about starting to rain. You can see I have my bucket. I'm scooping some water up. grabbing my net and going through the mud and the muck. I'm going to empty my net into that water and see what we've caught. Alright guys, we're all buckled up. We're going to head back to the house now because it looks like it's going to start to rain, and we're going to see what's in, oh gosh, our wetland dipping bucket. It's definitely raining outside, guys. It's a good thing we left the river when we did. I had to change my clothes because I was soaking wet. The first thing I did when I came inside, a tick check. That's right, good job guys. I checked behind my knees, between my toes, between my fingers, behind my ears, all along my back. Guess how many ticks I had on me? 3, plus the ones we had outside by the river. That's a lot of ticks. I emptied part of our bigger bucket into a small bowl so we can see what's in about half a cup of water. As you can see, our water is full of life. In our bowl, there are lots of different species of wetland invertebrates. The first one we're going to look at is the predaceous diving beetle larva. These are also known as water tigers because they eat everything and anything in their path. This creature here is a damselfly nymph. It has 3 gills on either side of its body. The largest creature we have in our bowl is a dragonfly nymph. Dragonflies can live in water as nymphs for 2 to 4 years before climbing to the top of a cattail where they shed their exoskeleton, open their wings, and become land-based dragonflies. If we look really closely, we can see what appears to be translucent sticks floating in the water. Those are actually phantom midge larvae. There we can see a predaceous diving beetle adult. They swim by paddling their oar-like legs, and they eat a variety of aquatic animals. Worming around there is a bloodworm. Usually this worm would spend time moving about in the muck and mud at the bottom of the marsh. They eat algae and tiny plants. Hi guys, we're back in the office. If you love nature and being outside as much as I do, you should visit your local Wapiti library to pick up your Notice Nature Passport. As you complete activities in the Notice Nature Passport, you're entered to win some pretty cool prizes. So not only do you get to go out and explore and do some really cool activities, you might even win something pretty nifty. The goals of Notice Nature are to connect people and kids and adults with the environment and the natural world around them. There are over 300 activities in the Notice Nature Passport. One that we did today, a little bit of insect ID. While we definitely heard nature, we know what running water sounds like. We were able to do some plant ID and some shrub ID today when we were out in the bush. We all know what this animal right here is. A beaver. We saw its dam today out in the field. Today we saw some pretty cool stuff. We learned about wetlands, what they are, what they look like, the different ecozones in Saskatchewan. We got to go out in the field and find a beaver dam. What else? There's so much. I walked in the river, got my socks and pants all wet. We went wetland dipping. We saw some pretty cool wetland invertebrates, and we even found a skull. That's so cool. Thank you guys for joining me on this awesome adventure. I can't wait for our next one. Remember to check out your Notice Nature Passport at your local Wapiti library. You can compete for some pretty awesome prizes. Get out, explore nature, it's amazing. A big thank you to Saskatchewan for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys, we're gonna see you next time. Bye-bye.